to do. There's this issue of 51%. I will discuss this in the mining lecture. Don't worry about it. As another interesting footnote, those who have the greatest influence over the Bitcoin currently have a financial incentive for the Bitcoin to both survive and appreciate in value. That's what we call engineering good incentives. Part of the brilliance of Satoshi Nakamoto when he wrote his paper describing the Bitcoin is he engineered a system where the early adopters who would have the greatest control over the system have the largest incentive to ensure that the system continues to grow and survive, not only to make sure that the currency becomes more distributed and to divest their accounts, but also to continue the initial design, because that's the only way the Bitcoin would increase in value. So the long of the short is that the Bitcoin will evolve, if it survives, into a currency like no other, a currency with almost no manipulatability possible, even by powerful nation states, which is, again, something that we're not used to with our current economic models. Okay, so let's discuss some Bitcoin-specific metrics. The first metric is the mining pool hash rate and work distribution. So we're going to discuss this in great detail in the mining lecture, but for the time being, let me just tell you that new Bitcoins enter the economy at a rate of about 25 coins every 10 minutes. And the algorithms try as hard as they can to ensure that this is the case. It's very complex how this is done. As a Bitcoin user, you never need to understand that. But it's important to know that these hash rates and work distribution are the mechanism upon which new money enters the system, and enters the system to usually new people. Or it enters the system in a way that it will be distributed to people very quickly, which is important for how new money enters the system. Regulation. Okay. There's a organization called FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And on March 18th, they said, let's look at the Bitcoin. And they wrote a memo. This is their memo. It's included in the links. Long and short is, they said the Bitcoin is A-OK. You're allowed to speculate. You are, when you deal with the Bitcoin, basically dealing with the Bitcoin the exact same way as if you're dealing with the euro or with the pound. So there you have it. It's legitimate now. And I've included a bunch of articles and links about this. Bitcoin Magazine had a whole article about it. I'd encourage you to email them if you want a deeper understanding of this decision. You can also discuss this with FinCEN if you so desire. I'm sure they'll be happy to address Bitcoin-related questions. All right. As I promised, we're going to discuss the Bitcoin days destroyed metric. Okay, so if you're pretty clever, you probably noticed that I transferred Bitcoins between myself. And when I mentioned that we record every Bitcoin transaction, the transaction that you guys witnessed, people actually now know about. It's been recorded. It's permanently sealed in the Bitcoin blockchain. And if somebody cared to see, they would see a transaction between two Bitcoin wallets, one public key and the other public key. As these wallets are anonymous, no one in the world, except for you guys watching this class, know that that was a transaction between Charles Hoskinson and Charles Hoskinson. It could have been Charles Hoskinson to Xiaowin Tao. Doesn't matter. You see, therefore, it's a really bad idea to measure the velocity of money, the movement of money in the economy, just based upon transactions alone, because that tells you nothing. People could be moving huge amounts of money between their wallets with no other parties involved, and it would be the same idea as if you're just handing a $20 bill to yourself. You have a $20 bill in your right hand, and you hand it to your left hand, and then some economist will go by and say, oh, that's a transaction. So we obviously needed a new type of metric to go ahead and describe the movement of money with Bitcoins. And this is based on the idea of saying, it's called Bitcoin days destroyed, and this idea is just basically saying how long between when you've received the money and when you've spent the money. So let's, I include an example. Let's say you received 10 Bitcoins 5 days ago, and then you bought a laptop for them today, because that would be worth about $920 at market rate. So you can get yourself a pretty good laptop. Okay, so you bought a laptop. And to calculate the Bitcoin days destroyed, you'll just simply take the amount of Bitcoins you received and times them by the amount of time in days you've held them. So that's 50 Bitcoin days destroyed. And there's a large host of very rich and interesting and deep statistics about Bitcoin days destroyed on the website blockchain.info. Let's see here. And I've also included a link to Bitcoin Stack Exchange, which actually describes Bitcoin days destroyed in a little bit more detail. There's a whole cool thing here about why they're useful and why we care about them. All you really need to know is it's a measurement of the velocity of money. It's a measurement of how quickly money is moving through the economy, trying to compensate for the fact that transactions between one person to the same person happen to also be recorded. So this is our way of getting around that. The blockchain. Okay, so the blockchain is like a ledger. It's basically a history of every transaction that has ever occurred since the beginning of the Bitcoin, since 2009, when the Genesis block was created. So every block created is then inserted into the blockchain, and a block is a set of transactions that have occurred over the last 10 minutes or so. And to visualize this, I'll go ahead and show you on this website, blockchain.info. And blockchain.info is currently upgrading their server tonight, so I can't get you a live feed, but this is a feed from about 7 hours ago. So this right here is the 231,887th block since the very first block of Bitcoins. Initially, when they were created, they were blocks of 50. Now they're blocks of 25. We'll discuss this in much more detail in the mining lecture. What a block is basically comprises of is, for our purposes, is all the transactions that have happened over the last 10 minutes. So unfortunately, because it's not a live feed, I can't say it's right now, but 6 hours and 58 minutes ago, there were 253 transactions. It's approximately 10 minutes, so sometimes less, sometimes more. 3 minutes before that, another block was found. 551 transactions in that block. 7 hours and 15 minutes ago, 25 transactions, and so forth. And sometimes the age gets a little wonky with their statistics. So this is not entirely right, but it gives you an approximate idea. But every transaction is verified and vetted, and the blockchain is the accounting ledger to verify these transactions. This is actually what prevents double spending. And again, we're going to go over this in much more detail in the mining lecture, and you'll develop a much more intuitive sense of what exactly a blockchain is, what exactly the blockchain is for the Bitcoin. Okay, so that is all I have for you. Thank you for listening. This is a hard lecture to get through. I'm very tired, and I hope you had fun. Bye-bye.